Welcome back. It is time now for The Way It Is, a look at the top political stories that have been taking place during the weekend, and of course, even as part of last week. Remember, this is an interactive segment, and so we do invite you to interact with us, especially on social media under the hashtag Morning Express KTN. You can also call in. We'll have our phone lines open and the numbers on your screens in just a moment as we go along. But first, with me here in studio, Moses Suburu is the Secretary General of the NASA Champions, and we also have Raymond Ochieng, who is a political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on The Way It Is. And of course, later on, we do expect lawyer Ambrose Weda. He will be joining us later on. But let's dissect first the top stories that have been making headlines in the country. And first, and something we cannot neglect, is the nurses' strike that is now making a different shift in the health sector. And nurses, as of midnight last night, said that they would make active their strike, which they did call off in December of 2016. Let's begin with you, Raymond, in terms of learning from what we saw with the doctors' strike, because there's a lot of finger-pointing now between the Ministry of Health, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, the Council of Governors as well. Your thoughts on how this situation has been handled?
Thank you so much, Michelle, to have me back. What happens, we must understand where we are coming from. There's a Salaries Remuneration Commission that should standardize and do oversight when it comes to remuneration across the public sector. But what has been happening is that you realize that the times that the MCAs pushed for their package, it ended up actually the SRC gave in. When the NPs did the same, the SRC gave in. And remember, this was a political year. The doctors, again, also really pushed the envelope too far. And there was the talk that, you see, we cannot sustain the wage bill that the doctors were proposing. But now, since they also really timed this strike, they knew very well that Jubilee needs to go for re-election. So definitely it was, the president was in a catch-22 situation. You remember, it went to the court and we had a standoff for almost 100 days. And so when this happened, the doctors were given them. One of the things that we analyzed, actually, we were in the studio, and I remember I said that this is also going to be having a ripple effect. And that's why the government was trying as much as they can so that they don't allow the doctors, the approval of the doctors' package. And you see, when that happened, then that's where we had the miss. So in terms of this, I put responsibility on SRC because they didn't get it right from the beginning. So what happens at this time? Again, Michelle, nurses are striking it at the right time. They know very well that we have 60-something days to elections, and they know very well they're going to play to the gallery. They know right now, if they say that they are going to support a government that is going to hear their cry, and certainly you may even find the opposition saying that, yes, just to do political goodies at this point by saying that, yes, we can look at what the nurses are saying. But at this point, again, I may also not, I don't want to annoy this fraternity, the medical fraternity. But again, in terms of the implementation of some of the things that have been promised, there's been a back and forth. And even you saw the doctors. It was agreed, but again, the COG, the Council of Governors, are saying we have not got money from the national government. The national government are saying that we have given you the money. So there is also a little bit in terms of the goodwill of implementation. There is also a challenge.
All right, and even
so
speaking of the goodwill of the implementation,
yes.
Of course, also one of the issues that the CBA has not quite been signed or has not been registered with the court. And this is the same issue that we saw in terms of the doctor's strike. So that brings in questions of the goodwill to implement these issues. Moses, your thoughts on this? And of course, again, like Raymond says, this is the right time. The nurses have picked the right time. But will this bring about a spiral effect in terms of seeing public servants now taking advantage of this situation?
Thank you, Michelle. Not going to the details of the CBA and SRC involvements, I want first of all to say that a government that is visionary and has been in power for 4 years and a half should have found it responsible enough to take care of this. You know, like I know, because all of us have been patients at one time or the other, that nurses play the most cardinal role in the treatment and handling of a patient.
Right.
Nurses are the core service providers in an hospital. So it should have been incumbent upon the regime currently running the affairs of government and state to make sure that there's a progressive approach to the welfare and issues that bedevil the nursing fraternity. Because if you don't take care of your nurses, how will they handle your patients? You claim to have lowered and reduced and actually done away with the maternity charges. But who is handling them? Who is taking care of those patients whose bills you've waived?
So we're seeing, Raymond,
Michelle,
just before you come in,
yes.
we're seeing a very reactionary approach to this. And this also speaks, like you mentioned, in this campaign period, speaks to the organization of the Jubilee administration. What is this likely to do to the electorate when these issues are coming up more and more?
Yeah, definitely. This, Michelle, will not be good for the Jubilee administration because the fact that we've got a cohort of a big number showing dissatisfaction, definitely it's it into the perception. But now in terms of hitting into that, before I finalize what Jubilee says, the likes of Oburu here is coming from a lobby group. And I think what they are also missing as NASA, Michelle, is in terms of don't just hit that a progressive government should do this. In terms of what's their alternative. I think right now they should be working on their messaging because, Michelle, as a matter of fact, where we have been, NASA has also been very responsible because they've got MPs in parliament. When they want to push for IBC, we saw them lying on the streets, they had their way. And it happened. So, Michelle, when it comes to if at all they threw tantrums on the medical care, on the health care, then at this point, I also hold them that, I know there's tyranny of numbers, but did we see them also pushing on the House and saying that this is what we need to do? So I also don't buy his sympatonic idea of just
a government that has been there for the past 4 years. And also that brings us the concept of whether NASA is a government in waiting or waiting to be in government, because we've been asking this question over and over. So Moses, maybe just being part of the NASA champions and looking at the manifesto that NASA has that many Kenyans still don't quite understand, what plans does NASA have for the health sector?
Our health plan for the country moving forward from 2017 after this general elections on from August 9th is very progressive. We have a very robust manifesto that takes care of, has very clear provisions on how nurses will be remunerated moving forward, doctors, and how all these issues that have been back and forth bedeviling the health sector will be handled. You know how Madam Gilu, who is part of us now, when she was Minister for Health, how much we moved forward, and Professor Nyang' Nyong'o. So we've cobbled up a manifesto that comes from the three parties, the five main parties in the coalition, and then when it comes out, I'm sure it will be out in the next 2 days. It will be very progressive.
And I hope it is one that is inclusive of all Kenyans, because when Nyang' Nyong'o was Minister for Health, I remember he had quite a bit of a health issue himself, and he constantly had to fly out of the country to seek medical care, something that doesn't bring much confidence, really. Yeah,
Michelle, Oburu is a good man. I think those are some of the things that it should be highlighting. And when they talk about the master plan, remember the electorate may really not get those systematic high-end strategies. But in terms of they need to really decipher them into very simple things. And they say in terms of this is what we are going to be offering in the healthcare. And something that really definitely appeals to the technical Kenyans, who some of us who are a little bit very few. But then there is also the majority. So I think if at all I would offer free consultancy to their group, is that then they should be drumming support for the alternative, because they've also been part and parcel of the crisis where we are. Because if it was to lobby for legislation, they would have also done the same.
All right. And Moses, before you come in, let's move on to the next topic. And this is the Uhuru versus Raila, so to speak, or Jubilee versus NASA, because we've seen that in the papers since the official campaign period kicked off. Both parties have been going out in rallies, and now they're both pointing fingers at each other, that one is stealing the other's manifesto and vice versa. Let's begin with you, Moses, in terms of right now we have President Uhuru Kenyatta saying that Raila Odinga is a copycat because of the free secondary education issue. He says that was his brainchild.
Just before I move to that, your question, I must answer him that all these things that you see bedeviling in the health sector are all governance issues. It's about how you manage your finances, how you manage your governance programs, and there's nothing else that, because all these things, the solutions are there, you know. Even their technocrats have shifted, but these guys have priorities. Their priorities are all wrong. You know, money is channeled to those sectors where money can be stolen. So there's no money to pay nurses, to fund programs that facilitate free flow of good health care. And so the problem really lies squarely on governance.
Moses, I don't disagree with you. What we are saying here, you've been part of the process. You remember, you don't come in isolation. You've not just woken up and landed in Kenya to know that the nurses are striking today. That's why, and this is also what you, Michelle, I'll not delve into what you just
he's addressing me as if I'm in government.
No, I'm not addressing.
You see,
Moses, you have to put your facts. I'm just putting my facts. What I'm just saying, that's what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. There's a crisis. But in terms of, I'm trying to offer them free strategy. And that's why the likes of Moses should really listen to some of these things to really help them to enhance what they're doing.
Does it hold any water when the opposition says they cannot implement these things, or cannot champion for some of these things because they're not in power and do not have the resources?
But our members of the Health Committee really speak volumes. I know they come here, some of them come here.
They come here.
And they articulate.
Moving forward. You see, at this point, why are we now getting their master plan is because nurses have threatened to strike. So that's why even this is the crisis that we have even about the primary education, and we're going to get into it later. That's why I'm saying that, you see, the likes of Moses, you people have to listen. You see, listening, because I'm also a Kenyan, and I'm also a voter. So what I'm saying in principle, you see, I'm not disagreeing with him in totality. What I'm also saying that he must own up, that they've been also forming part of parliament. And if at all raising this...
Our members of parliament, our members allied to our coalition, have done their part, my friend. When you have
what do you mean by saying they've done their part?
Which part? Which part?
Because talking in parliament isn't enough. Kenyans want to see
it's not getting anger. It's to say which part, to highlight.
You want them to go and block hospitals?
No,
maybe just to make it a little easier, Moses, just one or two major legislations that have come out from opposition parliamentarians, so to speak. Anyone that you can point out?
You know how the healthcare scheme that was supposed to make sure that health services are free, that Kenyans can access free healthcare across board, how it has been frustrated by cartels which have godfathers in this regime, so that the insurance companies can thrive and keep on conning Kenyans left, right, and center. I mean, healthcare in this country is one of the biggest scandal that has never been addressed, and that's why I'm sure that our government from 9th of August will address this, because we know who are the...
And what Kenyans want to know is how this is going to be addressed.
You see what Moses does not agree. That's why I'm saying, Moses, if he listens to me carefully, I'm not disagreeing. Actually, Michelle, health is in a crisis. That's a fact. In terms of the high turnover of even pulling out of resources from the donor communities, we saw what the US government did. You saw what happened when even the CS came and said that it's not the 5 billion that got lost. It's the 3 billion that got lost. Health is in a crisis. And if you can look at what the public sector healthcare is, it's a very big crisis. So what I'm saying that if we are admitting that we are in a crisis, they should give an alternative to the crisis. But what I may also not forgive him too is that some of these things they should have raised earlier, which even sober people from their side would say, yes, we've tried our best, but there are some gaps that have been there.
Right, because it seems reactionary. NASA's went on strike and NASA decided, hey, let's do something with the health sector.
My friend here is a governance expert, and I'm sure in his research, he has come across all our members' contributions, who has contributed what, and how our previous manifestos. I mean, we came from different parties, and you know how Wiper had its program, had anticipated to do its bit when it forms the government, how ODM and how UDF. You know, I'm sure you
Moses, I am. But in the public gallery, even Michelle, we had 100 days. That's the time that NASA should have come and said, hey, look, this crisis, this is our plan in the next government.
And it's all just about the nurses.
I've told you that our manifesto is coming out. I don't want to preempt it. I don't want to speak more about it. It will come out in the public, and you'll see it how elaborate it is, and how overarching it is.
All right, so let's hope it's something that Kenyans will be able to understand. But let's also still stick with the same issue, and that is a free primary education issue. That again boils down to the manifesto and the issues that whichever political divide is running for. So we've seen President Uhuru Kenyatta just yesterday complete his tour of Narok County, and in that tour he revived some of his key election promises, among them free secondary education, also having better cash transfer for the elderly. He had something to do with healthcare for women. But it is that issue of free primary education that has now become a media sensation, so to speak, with Uhuru Kenyatta saying that Raila Odinga had copied that promise, because Raila Odinga is also promising free secondary education. Raymond, does it matter, first of all, whose promise it was first?
I think it doesn't matter, and it's not a preserve of the Jubilee government. It has not been patented, that you can say, because I think looking at the way forward, you'd look at key sectors. We have the health sector that is very key. We have the security sector. We have the education sector. So I think in terms of all of them coming, and I think in terms of media has a little bit really hyped this topic a little bit, because I think the disagreement whereby the president was trying to raise that, listen, NASA, you're saying that you're going to be offering free primary education, but remember, our budgeting process had already started. And what the president was saying, that you cannot implement it by September. So you remember, it was just a matter of they've been trying to juggle themselves around the timelines of implementation, but not actually, because see, right now, nobody can say, I would really say that nobody has the preserve that even right now to Jubilee to say that it's what free primary education was ours. Because even in terms of their Marshall Plan, we've not had them go out clearly and say that this is what we are going to be offering, free primary education. So we found themselves in terms of their campaigns really hitting each other. So me, I see it as a point of they are colliding in the timeline. They are trying to critique each other's implementation. But to me, from where I sit, there is nothing about who came with it first, because we want to hear what
so before we continue, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto wound up their 3-day campaign tour of Nakuru County with a call to Kenyans to maintain peace in the election period. Let's now listen in to Victor Gale with more details.
The president told Kenyans to uphold the values of nationhood and patriotism, which are key to the country's stability. Addressing a congregation at Kingdom Seekers Fellowship Church in Nakuru town, the president urged religious leaders, men and women of goodwill, to go down on their knees and pray for the country. Kenyatta said he was ready to do everything in his power to ensure that peace prevails in the country before, during and after the August 8th general election. He challenged those vying for political seats to do so without inciting wananchi as they go around seeking votes.
The announcement that we made was that win or lose, our greatest mission must be to ensure that never again will Kenyans fight, shed blood, and destroy property for the sake of politics. And that mission we started here, the county that saw possibly the greatest loss of life and damage to property in the country during the unfortunate events of 2007 and 2008. And God was good, and we have had peace. And we want that peace to continue prevailing. That's what I've heard you say also. It's like you were listening to what I was saying yesterday.
We confess with all of you that any plan or scheme configured against our country will not succeed.
And he reiterated their reason for picking Nakuru County as their first campaign stop.
Tulianzia siasa zetu hapa kwa sababu tulisema tukiwa na amani Nakuru, sisi tunajua ya kwamba tutakuwa na amani Kenya mzima.
The president took a swipe at NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga for his recent announcement that should NASA ascend to power, then they will ensure free secondary education.
Honorable Raila Odinga, let me inform you that when you make policy, it requires planning. Tunaelewana? Ukija kunena kitu, usinene ati ndio upigiwe makofi. Sisi wakati tulinena, tulijua ni kwa nini tunasema Januari, kwa sababu tunajua where the gaps are
that we must meet in order for us to be able to offer our fellow Kenyans free secondary education.
President Kenyatta toured sections of Nakuru suburbs, including Free Area, Lanet, Mbaruk, Gilgil, and Naivasha.
May God bless you, may God bless them.
Victor Gale, KTN News, Nakuru County.
Meanwhile, the NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga led his co-principals and other opposition leaders to their first NASA rally in Nandi County. The leaders sought to convince the residents to give them a chance to lead the nation, dismissing the Jubilee government as one that has failed its people.
Thousands of their supporters from Fundwide flocked the arena. However, drama unfolded as the rally was temporarily interrupted after a group of people alleged to be Jubilee operatives attempted to disrupt the rally. Moments after the NASA principal made their way to the showground to address the residents. It took the intervention of police to repulse Jubilee supporters who were waving Uhuru Ruto placards and chanting Jubilee slogans, something that angered the Pentagon members.
Uhuru alionyesha kule Nyeri ndio tabia wameleta hapa Kapsabet. Ikiwa wana Jubilee wanataka wafanye campaign katika Kenya hii, basi tabia hii wawache, kwa sababu wa Kenya wataonyesha zaidi tabia kama hiyo.
Kwa sababu tunajua ni kukosa ajira ndiye nafanya wanatumiwa vibaya na viongozi wabaya.
Kwa hivyo mimi yangu ni ndugu wa Nandi, ndugu wa Rift Valley, Kenya nzima, tuungane mpaka serikali tuunge tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8, serikali ya National Super Alliance.
Wanandi wamekuwa wakilisha Kenya, lakini sasa Wanandi wamekuwa maskini. Kweli urongo? Wakulima wa majani chai wanalia, sio? Wale wakulima wale wafugaji wa ng'ombe wanalia, sio? Wakulima wa mahindi si wanalia? Kweli urongo? Wote wanalia kwa sababu uchumi wa kilimo imeharibika.
But the brigade braced heavy rains and continued their Jubilee onslaught. They rallied the electorates to vote out the Jubilee government, accusing them of mismanaging and running down the country. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Kapsabet, Nandi County.
Those two reports now form the basis of our conversation here on The Way It Is. But before that, let me introduce Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer, as well as Owino Kotieno, who is the member of County Assembly, Serangombe Ward in Kibra constituency. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. And we also have Raymond Ochieng, who is a governance expert, and Moses Soburu, who is the Secretary General of the NASA Champions. Many thanks for staying with us in studio. I'd like to begin with you, Weda, and the stories that we've just seen there setting precedents. Let's begin with the NASA rally in Nandi County. And while that rally was ongoing, I remember there was quite a bit of disturbance there by Jubilee supporters, so to speak, causing mayhem, pulling down placards by the NASA supporters. And the response by NASA leaders is that they may just do the same to them when Jubilee holds rallies in NASA strongholds, so to speak. So we're seeing quite a bit of political intolerance going on at the beginning of the campaign period. Your thoughts on this?
I think there's no political intolerance worth advertising and talking about. I think their first issue for NASA was the rain. The rain scattered, and then a few individuals. You can never know. Sometimes the strategy in politics, you take your supporters, you wear the opponent's uniform, and then they come and disrupt
So NASA did this all on their own?
I'm saying it can. I'm not saying that's what happened. So that you speak to your base, your supporters, wherever they are, so that you get sympathy and they feel now our brother was not liked or was not treated well. That is one. Two, there are also some excited supporters. If you see those people, some of them were making noise. It's no different from when you go to Migori and they throw a shoe at the president. It's only that when it is them, it is like the whole world has come to an end. But when it is the president being, shoes being thrown at the president in Migori and being threatened, now they think hallelujah, and they don't talk about it. They didn't talk about it. I didn't hear Raila saying what happened with the president was bad in Migori the last time the president went there. Then there were no campaigns. We, as Jubilee, we do not like such kind of disruption. Let them come and dance and do their propaganda, and then they go. We want a peaceful election. So those who are involved in an attempt to make noise during the NASA rally, that is not our modus operandi as Jubilee. Right. We like peace.
Let's hear
we want to defeat them clean.
Let's hear from Kotieno, because, I mean, you've been out on the ground, especially in these political rallies, and you would understand what happens there. Your thoughts on this kind of intolerance that we saw in the rally yesterday, and where the buck stops in terms of maintaining sanity in this campaigning period?
Thank you so much, Michelle. First of all, let me inform my friend Ambrose that two wrongs don't make a right. If at all the people in Migori could have actually gone out of the way and threw a shoe to the president, that one does not mean that if the same or something like that is done in Kapsabet, she would actually go and challenge them. First of all, I want to say that it is the duty of these political leaders and political parties, wherever they are, to talk to their supporters and Kenyans at large, to inform them that this is just a contest that by 8th of 8th, we would be done by rate, and Kenya as a country and Kenyans will be there. There is a need to maintain peace. What is lacking, I think, that we should now start fostering in is the politics of ideas, politics of tolerance. And this one can only happen if those two political parties decide to make a deliberate steps that is going to usher in a new kind of politics.
Right.
And for quite some time, young people have not been involved seriously. Involvement of young people in political parties is not just a matter of giving them placards that feeds probably Tuko Pamoja or 10 million strong. Involving them in this campaign basically means that they form part and parcels of campaign and institutional building process of those particular parties, so that they also feel that we can identify with this party. It is only unfortunate that they're identifying with these parties when they are foot soldiers. I want to see them move to the highest rank of these institutions, so that we can see them becoming ranks and files of these political parties. That is not happening.
Actual stakeholders.
Yes.
And not to forget that the youth also make up majority of the voting population. Moses, your thoughts, and Kotieno brings up the issue of the manner in which the youth are being utilized. Politics of ideas has not really been instilled in the youth, so to speak. Talk about this political intolerance that we saw in Kapsabet, and whether it's really a non-issue, as Weda puts it.
First of all, I'm surprised that Ambrose Weda, senior advocate of the High Court, has not found it right to condemn whatever happened in Kapsabet yesterday, and choosing to relate it to what happened in Migori 2 years ago. That had nothing to do with NASA. We have reliable information from the ground in Kapsabet that this act was organized and money changed hands by the local Jubilee leadership in Nandi County to try and portray NASA as unpopular in the Rift Valley. But you can see from the screenshots that it failed. Further, let me say that as champions of NASA, our main goal is to make sure that we focus our campaign, the NASA campaign, to the grassroots on a peaceful platform. It is an issue-based politics. You know how our principles have been passing down their messages. It's all peace, it's all peace. And you've not had incidences where abuses or or negative expletives are thrown at the so we implore, we beseech Weda's team to please try and make your supporters know that this is just a contest. This is a contest, it's a competition.
And it will end
after the 8th
of August.
Kenyans want good governance.
All right.
Yes.
And speaking of good governance, Raymond, it all boils down to the governance and the party leaders and the candidates running for various positions. But then again, we keep asking these questions. What more can the leaders do?
The leaders have a responsibility. And Michelle, in terms of the extremist gimmicks that I'm getting from Weda and the extreme ODM, I think I agree with what Mheshimiwa had said before. First of all, let's not dig much and go to what happened in Migori. I think, remember, this is the nascent stage of the campaigns. We've kicked the campaigns off. And the best thing that, you see, people have been bashing IEBC, that IEBC is responsible for 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the time that the political parties have to be responsible for their strongholds. And Michelle, it would be beautiful for Uhuru Kenyatta to come to Kisumu, and Raila says, welcome the president.
Right.
Hear what he says. And the president also says, when you come to my backyard in Gatundu, welcome, he's our brother. Let him tell you what he says. So this is the time that we need to talk about, because you see, everybody's talking about that we need a transparent, a peaceful election. If these small packets of intolerances, we are going to be allowing them. So the first thing that, Michelle, we have to do, we have to condemn what happened in Kapsabet, and we have to say that this should not happen. Everybody should even play a responsibility in their strongholds, so that we make sure that, because if at all we talk with Moses has really highlighted a very good thing, that we must go to the issue-based. The issue-based will not come in a vacuum. It will come by political players actually also extending that leaf, so that we don't play these gimmicks of, you see what, it's us against them, we are going to pull them down. And even, it's unfortunate, when we'll get emotional leanings of both sides saying that, you see what, we are waiting for you to come to our strongholds. I think that is not going to be good for this country. And as Kenyans who are listening, I think it is time that we make sure that let's welcome Raila even in the extreme, in the inside territories of Jubilee. And Jubilee also, let's welcome also Uhuru Kenyatta on NASA's stronghold, so that we listen to what they say, because this Kenya is for everybody, and everybody has got a right to campaign anywhere.
All right. And of
so
course,
it is unfortunate.
If they're very confident of their support in their strongholds, then there really should not be a problem.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it is, just before that, at the end of the day, it is a game of numbers. And all these parties, through these campaigns, are trying to ensure that they get as many votes as possible. Kotieno brought in the issue of 10 million strong. And we've had that quite a bit, with NASA saying they want 10 million votes, Jubilee saying the same thing. But then there's that 3.7 million votes from the swing counties, so to speak, that may ultimately tilt this scale. Weda, talk to us about the campaigns that we're likely to see now for the presidential rallies.
First of all, I will respond to...
All right, go ahead.
Always remember, I am a lawyer. When a statement is made, you have to deal with it. This selective hearing that Weda has said that this thing was okay, this attack was okay, I have said it was unfortunate. The word unfortunate means it is wrong, my brothers. You need to understand English. 2, I said also that when it happened in Migori, the party leader, Honorable Raila Odinga, did not utter a word. He did not say this is wrong. Now, when now some similar thing happens, we jump up and say, wow, it is wrong across board, and let us stop it. But let us know that just as the leaders were threatening that they'll go to their strongholds and they'll do the same, that's now a bad leadership. That I would say is...
a tit for tat.
And they should stop it. I don't think the president encourages something like... He would not encourage it. We want a clean victory, which is coming. And you can see it.
Now you're clear. Now you're clear.
You're not clear.
Now
no, it's only English, which was difficult for some of you.
Let's move on.
Now, you asked about going forward in the campaign. The Jubilee is going to unveil what has not been done, that will continue to be done on the foundation laid, and the new things including including free secondary education, which has been in the course of implementation. Government has been giving a portion of money to supplement school fees for every child, but now they're budgeted to take care of everything. But I think after the president said it, leaked it at the Madaraka Day in Nyeri, and Honorable Raila was around there, and he had it. And then when he went to his next rally, he said, now the second thing after reducing rent is to give free secondary schools education by September. And then now there's been a tussle, who is stealing whose. But I think it is a good thing. One thing we should look at, when that kind of contest comes, where the president says this and the opposition says they can do it, and it's a good thing, we say now we are turning to issue-based. It is only that some may be using it to get just the votes. So they say, I'll do it tomorrow. Another one say, I will plan systematically so that on this date it will come. But you can see, if we could turn our politics to issues, we stop propaganda and dancing, we accept, here Jubilee has done very well, here they had a problem, so this is our alternative policy, then the country, the voters will then vote assured of what to expect. Right. They will not vote on tribe or on motions or things, which we have seen before. Those people who are dancing, they needed those people who are purporting to disrupt the rally in Kapsabet. They actually needed to have listened. If they're Jubilee supporters, say, tell us, what are you coming to do? And
it's a great
and that's
point.
What we want to hear.
It's a great point Weda brings up. For the first time, we're seeing leaders fighting about an issue as opposed to fighting about an individual issue. But Kotieno, just even before we get to the issues and the manifestos, still talking about the votes that the different divides are looking for. And the question now is whether it's going to be a little unsafe for parties to delve into their opposition strongholds, considering what happened in Kapsabet yesterday and the rhetoric by leaders there that they might do the same if Jubilee visits opposition strongholds. But yesterday we saw NASA in Nandi County, which is traditionally has been billed as an opposition stronghold. But NASA now has several aspirants running in Nandi County, more than 50, I believe. And they say they will ensure that 50% of the Nandi vote goes to NASA. Maybe just to paint some insight into the dynamics of capturing votes in an opposition stronghold or a rival stronghold, so to speak.
First of all, I want to say that probably whatever happened in Kapsabet was just an isolated incident. I do not want it to trickle down or to be replicated elsewhere in this country, because if a section of this country burns, the entire country would burn. So it is always important for us to nip these things in the bud before they take actually a bad route.
All right.
I want to say that the people in Nandi, everybody, and especially those people whom we are perceiving to be in our opponent's stronghold, those are Kenyans just like any other Kenyan. And they are also wearing this shoe that is pinching the most. So what matters is, has Jubilee actually delivered to those so-called stronghold areas? If it is no, those people will definitely buy the idea and they will actually buy the product that is being sold by NASA. And the product that is being sold by NASA is an alternative government, alternative leadership, better governance, and reduced cost of living. Whether should actually understand that last time, what Jubilee was selling was MAU and ICC. Today, that rhetoric and that narrative is no longer there. If it is high cost of living, the way people in NASA are bearing that brand of high cost of living is the same with the people living in Jubilee. They are not blind. They've seen the vices that have been committed by this government. They are not going to be patient for the next 5 years because of this thing that has been inflated that my friend Weda is talking about. I want to see people opening up their zones, just like in football. You saw the other day Real Madrid and Juventus. First half, Juventus was actually playing defensive. Immediately when they were hammered, they opened up. And I'm expecting the same to apply in those Jubilee so-called stronghold. They will definitely open up to the ideas of NASA. They'll want to listen and probably also give them a chance for that total leadership, because if 5 years, Uhuru Kenyatta is saying for 4 years, there were no plans, there were no policies. Nobody was even called actually to come and give his probably his thoughts on this free secondary education. And now he's saying that he's going to give it. First of all, you should know that Uhuru has no monopoly of ideas and policies in this country. Article 43 is very clear on the basic rights, and education is part of it. Now we want to move it a scale further to ensure that from primary to secondary, it is free. Free is different from supplementing.
All right.
You understand?
All right. And that is, of course, getting into the promises. Jubilee also promising the same thing. But Moses, 3.7 million votes in the grubs that could likely tilt the scales. How is NASA planning to back these votes?
I'll talk about that. But I want to, some things must be put in that right context. Free education in this country was first delivered by NAC. And you know the role of most of our principals in that NAC government. And it is only fair for them, to Kenyans, to try and move it a notch higher. And within our coalition, when you say about planning and financial expert, I think since 1993, I think there's never been a finance minister who delivered and helped the country out of economic doldrums like Musalia did when he was a finance minister after Jirongo, who is a puppet of Jubilee, and his team, of YK92, who are now running the government, messed up the economy. So when we talk about delivering free secondary education by September, it is a thought-out process. The members of the Pentagon and our experts have researched and have co-opted a plan concrete enough to deliver this.
This is something that Uhuru Kenyatta also points out. And the plan is so elaborate that 1 month after getting into office, NASA can implement free secondary education. 1 month.
What our presidential candidate, Raila Odinga, said, it's not a roadside declaration. It is a well-thought-out thing. It has been discussed. It has been planned, and the program is just out waiting for implementation.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Let's listen to Raymond because once again, this boils down to a governance issue. What is it that NASA can do in a month that the Jubilee administration has been trying to do for so long in implementing free secondary education? So that brings in the timeliness and how realistic the promises that our leaders are making.
I think also to be a little bit gracious on NASA, just the way I reiterated, and I'm glad that Weda has also really brought the same, that I think we are really happy that across the divide, we are getting people getting on each other's neck because of issues and not because of name bashing. I think that's going to really be progressive. So we're even waiting to see the presidential debate, how it's going to look at. Because what I've said in terms of these two scenarios is whereby what the president was raising in terms of the collision that we have is not who should implement it. It's a good idea for Kenya. What they were saying, the way I had said, Michelle, earlier, is that every divide is trying to ask the other one, how are you going to implement it? Because the other one is saying that, you see what, you cannot do it in September. Actually, that's what the president was saying, that remember the budgeting process has been done, September is unattainable according to the timeline. So whether NASA says they're also going to do the same, I think that's good for this country. I think in terms of NASA then has to go ahead and then tell us, if it's going to be in September, which Jubilee is asking, NASA, how will you do it in September? They should tell us how are they going to do it. So it's moving forward. And I think even in terms of Jubilee, it will also be really good in terms of upscaling the education. So, Michelle, I'm a very happy person that if we can also have another issue on health being debated this way, if we can have another thing on security being debated this way, so that we will not have this issue of the name bashers and the hooligans
and also just
and the
moving away from
shenanigans may really have little to say, because we are going to pin them on issues.
All right. And of course, even as the campaigns go on, Kotieno, we've seen NASA in Bondo, we've seen NASA in Nandi, in Kapsabet, and we've also seen NASA continuously call for 6-piece voting. But then within NASA, there's 5 affiliate parties. And so on one hand, ODM is calling for ODM 6-piece voting. What happens to the other 5 parties, and how is this likely to play out ahead of the elections?
Well, that's a very, very good concern. When we say we are going for 6-piece voting, 6-piece voting basically means that we want to vote those who would be the best within the NASA alliance or NASA fraternity. We are not in competition with Wiper. We are not in competition with Ford Kenya.
But we've seen ODM say vote ODM, ODM, ODM.
In strongholds probably that would be perceived, in places that would be perceived as ODM stronghold, there's also nothing wrong to call for that. But I know within the NASA alliance, we are only going to vote in candidates who are affiliated to NASA. Whether it will be Ford Kenya that gets the ticket in Bondo or ODM or Wiper or CCM, at the end of the day, we shall come together anybody who will want to join NASA after this election would only come in at post-election level, but not at this stage. At this stage, you are very comfortable with the affiliate parties, and I can assure you that if all factors remain constant, by 4 p.m. we should have beaten the likes of weather. And I can inform you the reason as to why I'm of that opinion. Yep.
But even before we get to the likes of weather, remember that we still have independent candidates who were ODM members and basically just opposition members, very strong and popular in their regions, who have now decamped and are running as independent candidates. Oburu, as part of the NASA champions, what strategy is there to ensure that the ODM or the NASA six-piece voting actually works out, considering that these independent candidates are rather popular?
Michelle, we have a very clear interactive dynamics on how we've mapped out the country, and we know which candidates hold the upper hand to be elected, and the details on how we are going to work on this, I think,
still yet to come.
In the presence of weather here, I would not divulge, because but we've mapped across the country. I come from ANC myself, and I know there's talk about some altercation between ODM and my party and Fort Kenya and Western, the former Western Province, but there's no problem. We have internal dynamics, and there's something that you'll see.
Raymond,
all the strong candidates will.
Is there really no problem? The independence furor is something that both Jubilee and NASA have completely dismissed. But is there really no problem? Look at Kisumu, the likes of Jack Rangu.
Actually, Michelle, I've been the main prophet of independent candidates in the media houses, and this is an idea that people have really shrugged. And remember, in terms of these elections, Jubilee strongholds are a little bit very intact. NASA strongholds are very intact. And there are swing areas. We have some few swing counties, like the Kuria, the Narok, Kajiado has got some packets of swing votes. Then we have the youth effect, the youth factor that is going to be a critical swing vote. Then the other one, Michelle, the way you've mentioned it telepathically, is the independent candidates. And you see in both camps, it's a headache. And I've always tried to advise in terms of the best way. I think one side has really disregarded the independent candidates. And NASA actually went out and said that, you see what, if you're not for us, you are either for us or against us. You've seen the president saying that, you see what, try. And then when we reach there, we can see how we work together. But you've also seen, even in terms of the media, there's also a little bit of pressure from people within Jubilee pushing the president to tell the independent candidates that either you are for us or against us. So Jubilee is also in a catch-22 situation. And why are they influential, Michelle? Some of the independent candidates got over 70,000 votes. And in terms of why the independent candidates may affect the election results, is if I knew, and we are aware, that the party primaries, Michelle, didn't take place the way we want, across the political value chain, some of the products that we have, look at what we have in Busia. We have Otuoma and we have the Ojamong thing. That is something that you cannot disregard. Just the way we have in Kiambu, we have the Kavogo and we have the Waititu case. So we may have to address, the parties may have to address apathy. Because if I know that my candidate, whether I vote or not, it's not going to add to the value. Because remember, it's been a mantra of numerics. The optics of the numbers. We've had Jubilee coming and saying that, you see what, 45 million strong, 70% plus one. We've had COD talking about 10 million strong. Then it means, Michelle, every vote counts to add to that tally. So in terms of how they're going to be handling independent candidates, I think in terms of NASA needs to really rethink and to have more of a soft strategy to make sure that even independent candidates, because like finally we have Jack Rangumu, who is also kind of having an influence in Kisumu. So if you tell Jack that, you see what, you are on your own, in one way or the other you can say, we are not going to campaign for you, but do your part.
We'll meet
we'll meet at the end. But you cannot disregard them if they're talking about this.
And Weda, because we have quite a short time, Weda, you've come here over and over again and completely rubbished the issue of voter apathy. On one of the dailies this morning is a very elaborate article with the press saying that President Uhuru Kenyatta is actually concerned about the voter apathy in the country. And, you know, he has put together quite an elaborate team to drum up support from the youth. And he is also similarly championing for a parallel tallying center, something similar. Voter apathy is something that you've rubbished. Raymond also brings it in. Every vote will count. What is the situation where we stand on voter apathy right now?
Okay, before I deal with that, I want to deal with the question of Mudavadi being the best. Just go and see what Raila himself has sued Mudavadi several times. He called him names. He said so many things. Please counter-check that one. And remember, Goldenberg was part of Mudavadi's legacy. Number two, please allow me.
No, I must.
Number two, allow me. Somebody says he will implement free secondary education by 1st of September. 1st of September, the whole of August, elections are declared. Then you appoint ministers. They're supposed to go to Parliament. They're supposed to be approved. Parliament is supposed to constitute. They're supposed to have committees. This cannot happen within this period unless somebody is saying is going to do this by decree, dictatorship, without consulting others. If you look at it logically as a government, as a major government decision, that is not practical, and therefore Honorable Raila Odinga is just talking to get votes. Voter apathy. Voter apathy is drummed up more in the media houses. If you see the enthusiasm with which the Raila supporters are, if you see the enthusiasm with which the Uhuru supporters are, they will come out. They will come out and vote by 4 a.m. They'll be lining up.
What makes you say that, with the current dissatisfaction that we saw even with the
what I'm saying, but let's look all this. Let's look at the elections over the years. The 2013, we talked about voter apathy. There was nothing. The 202, all the 207, we talked about voter apathy. Still, they came out.
Remember what came.
Let me finish.
I think Uhuru is being President Uhuru.
Let me finish.
President Uhuru is being honest.
Please let me finish.
On his,
let me finish.
He has disappointed his support base. So
now,
he's being very honest.
You don't allow people to finish?
All right, Weda, go ahead.
If you can see, even the independent candidates, then the party candidates, they are all drumming up support for themselves. Their supporters will turn up. Their same supporters, they are telling, vote for Uhuru, vote for Raila. So if Rangoma's supporters come out, Nyong'o's supporters come out, they will all vote for their presidential candidate, but they all come out. If the turnout is about 70%, which I can guarantee you will come, then where is this apathy? Where you tell, even though we don't take anything for granted, as Jubilee, every vote counts. But the talk of there will be apathy, whatever, that is not going to be there. That's why we are trying to bring peace.
Gentlemen, we're out of time, but there's an important conversation that we must touch on very quickly. Kotieno, let me begin with you. This is the issue of the IEBC. Seemingly, I don't know if it nailed it or whether it failed in the integrity vetting question. And this also brings out the question of preparedness ahead of the general election, because IEBC is not the only stakeholder. We have the likes of EACC and we have other institutions, but are they working seamlessly, considering that EACC brought out a list of 106 way after the bus left the train for the IEBC? Very briefly as we wind up.
On this subject, I don't want to blame IEBC because we have a plethora of other institutions that could have supported IEBC or that could have ensured those people who've been tainted or those people who've been mentioned adversely in different scams and different scandals could have been dealt with a long time ago because this is a legal issue. This is a constitutional issue. If you read and understand Article 50, then even EACC would not be wasting our time saying this so-and-so should not be cleared, so-and-so should not be cleared. It is very clear that Article 50 says that everybody is innocent until proven otherwise. And those 106 people are still innocent. And I was even expecting some more names than in that list, but quite unfortunately, those names are not featuring there.
Right.
So the issue of 106 is neither here nor there.
Right.
Let's move on, and probably from next year, 2022, let's deal with them from that level.
Right. Well, very, very briefly,
Qualification
5 seconds.
for contesting is spelled by the law. It's only the court that can convict a person, and when you exhaust all avenues of appeal, then you can. This other drama that civil societies are bringing, or IEBC or EACC, will be unconstitutional and unacceptable. I conclude by telling my friends, you need to enjoy the rally. It's good. It's a
all right. We're always championing for the SGR. Raymond, very briefly.
Michelle, very briefly. One thing that happens, too little, too late, in terms of the Article 6 working group, I think in terms of what they were trying, they were very ambitious and expected. If at all they were going to act on it we would have been a very happy nation.
All right.
But definitely it was just the simple talk. This thing should have really come earlier so that it's not suspect. It comes by the time that we are having general election and the mood is on, because when you get somebody convicted, then it will be seen politically.
Political goodwill. Oburu, very briefly.
I think they've been exhausted, but why have apathy? It's because the economic situation in the country. You know, so many people whose mortgages cannot be repaid, many marriages collapsing.
So that is the reason.
Families
dissatisfaction.
Uhuru is genuinely worried about his support base being apathetic to vote, because what he promised, he has totally failed to deliver.
All right, so we'll have to stop it there, gentlemen. Many thanks for joining us on The Way It Is. We'll be speaking to Moses Oburu, who is the Secretary General of the NASA Champions, governance expert Raymond Ochieng. We've also had lawyer Ambrose Oweda, who joins us religiously on The Way It Is. And last but not least, Owino Kotieno, who is the Member of County Assembly, Sarangombe Ward in Kibra constituency. Many thanks for staying with us, gentlemen, and thank you for contributing and being part of this conversation. We take a short break here on Morning Express, and remember, we're also releasing those watching us on KTN Home. It is now time for Life and Style. We'll take a short break now.